A panicked Donald Trump is scrambling to kill the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. As I've said before, if you're totally innocent, why are you panicking? And Donald Trump is in full-blown panic mode here because there's a rogue faction of Republicans that is dangerously close to forcing a vote on releasing all of the Jeffrey Epstein files, not the 97% that are already public, the real stuff. We're talking here about the critical documents that they've been sitting on. Congressman Thomas Massie, not a liberal darling, not a guy who I look at and say, those are my politics. Congressman Thomas Massie is working with our friend Congressman Khanna to gather signatures for what's called a discharge petition. It would bypass Republican leadership and it would bring a full vote on releasing the files to the floor. They are, as of this writing, 2 Republican signatures away from forcing that vote, and Trump is absolutely losing it. Cocoa for cuckoo puffs, as I like to say. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You could say it either way. The White House reportedly warned these rebels in the Republican Party that if you do this, we see it as a hostile act. What does that mean? Well, you have to remember, Trump's prism is loyalty. And his goal is fear and power. So what Trump is trying to do here is to say, if you participate in this, even if you're a Republican, I will turn against you. I might try to primary you. It's sort of like the nice congressional office you've got here. Sure would be a shame if anything were to happen to it, like it's mafia style stuff. Now, again, we get to the sort of critical material question. What's in the files? We don't know. The panic tells you a lot. If it were nonsense, if Trump had nothing to do with Epstein, if there was nothing new in these files, why would you work so hard to bury them? Now, as I've said before, it might be that Donald Trump is simply trying to protect his friends who are incriminated in the files. It might be that Donald Trump is in the files, but not with any criminal wrongdoing, but just because he was in that orbit and he wants to cover that up. Or it might be that Donald Trump is accused of criminal involvement in the sex trafficking in the file. We just don't know. The Oversight Committee has already released 33,000 documents, but 97% of those were already public. We're not falling for the fake transparency. No client list, no new names, no justice for the victims. We need the full files. Now, meanwhile, Republican Congressman Thomas Massie says that Trump's campaign to block the vote is very intense behind the scenes and that Trump has recruited others like Speaker Mike Johnson to try to whip votes against this idea. But the problem for Trump is that even some of his most loyal sycophants are breaking ranks. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, who ran out of an Epstein victim hearing sobbing yesterday. They all signed the petition. And Mace was in tears. She said it was so difficult for her because less than 2 years ago, she was the victim of a sexual assault. And it just was too much for her to handle. She had a panic attack and she wants to put the files out. So when even that group of people is willing to defy Donald Trump on this, to some degree, the tide seems to be turning. And the excuse that this is about attention seeking for Thomas Massie and Khanna, I don't think so. I mean, Trump ran, at least initially, on transparency on Epstein. Later on, he started to equivocate. Remember when Fox said, you're going to release the JFK files? Absolutely. You're going to release the MLK files? Files no one was asking for, by the way. Absolutely. You're going to release the Epstein files? Yeah, well, I'm not totally sure on Epstein files. You know, there could be people in there who we don't want to ruin their lives. They might not really have had anything to do with it. So we started to get a sense as Trump got closer to being reelected that he was not so hell-bent on releasing the Epstein files. Now, there's a White House official that told CNN that anybody working with Massie on this would be seen as a traitor. Massie fired back saying this is simply about corruption. It's not about partisanship. It's not about taxes or jobs or the economy. It's not about any of that. It's just about corruption, and we don't care about party. Now, one other sort of interesting aspect to this. Thomas Massie is operating under the belief, the assumption, that Trump's base wants to know the truth and get the Epstein files. Now, that's probably true. You know, the QAnon crowd, the MAGA keyboard warriors, they spent years obsessing over Epstein until it started getting a little too close to home. And so we now are in a situation where I'm not as convinced, given the assumption that Trump is at least in the files, even if not implicated in crimes, but in the files. I'm not so sure that the hardcore MAGA base really still wants the files if it's going to implicate the dear leader. Counterpoint, we know that in cults, when the dear leader is implicated, the cult members, or at least the most brainwashed ones, tend to just either ignore it, say that those are lies, the files were planted, what Trump did isn't really that bad. So I don't think we're going to get a clear read on really how the hardcore MAGA base will react. One other thing about this. The question I'm most interested in is who Donald Trump believes he's protecting by trying to quash the release of these files. The obvious assumption is that it's Trump himself. As I mentioned earlier, there's maybe Trump's friends are in there and Trump is trying to protect them. The only thing that makes me doubt that is Trump has always been transactional. He doesn't really care about other people, maybe his own family, but political allies, they come and go. Trump doesn't really care about other people. I wonder whether Trump would really go out on a limb and potentially make his own base say, you're not being transparent the way you told us you were going to be. I question whether Trump would really do that for other people. The counter to that is, it's not that he cares about the other people's reputations. It's that his success depends on those other people, either in terms of political support or financial support. And so, yes, Trump is acting to protect other people, not because he genuinely cares about them, but because there's something in it for him. Are they Mar-a-Lago members? Are they senators who help him? What are they? So if this were a nothing burger, if Trump's name weren't in there, or if Trump didn't have anything to lose, I think we would have the files by now. Trump would be demanding it. Instead, Trump is panicking. He's scrambling. He's calling in favors. He's threatening his own party. And nothing says I'm innocent like trying to kill a vote on releasing evidence that you ran initially on being transparent about. So I'll put it to you. What do you think is really in the files? Why do you think Trump is panicking to cover them up? Leave us a comment at substack.davidpakman.com.